I know that my work would have sold better if it was in a bigger booth and all about expanding and taking space. It is a little bit ironic. Last week, I took my art to my first art fair ever. I've had exhibitions before, solo exhibitions before, but I never actually joined one of those big art fairs. In this video, I want to share what mistakes I made during my first art fair and what I learned from them. And for the first mistake, I actually have to do a little introduction. My name is Roxy van Bemmel. I have been a full-time artist for 7 years now. I am an independent artist, which means I don't work with galleries at the moment. I have experience with galleries, but I just haven't found the right fit. And the art fair that I joined was just for artists. There were no galleries present. My work is all about expanding and taking up space. I do this via making these really large self-portraits that literally take up space, and the work is very therapeutic to me because I can see myself through the painting, basically. I care a lot about showing myself in a fragile way, even though my paintings don't seem fragile at all. The stories can be pretty intense to tell at an art fair. And that leads me to my first mistake, because that first mistake was not having a bigger booth. If you've ever looked at joining an art fair as an artist, then maybe you've seen that the fees are quite big. They can add up. As a gallery, they're probably even more. And it depends on the audience that they attract, which is the whole reason you're going to an art fair, because there's like a lot of eyes on your work. Which is also the reason I've never applied to one before. There's not a lot of choice in the Netherlands either. There's mostly art fairs just for galleries, and in order to be taken by a gallery, you have to join that gallery or exhibit with that gallery, and it's just not for me at the moment. I found this art fair that I heard other people had joined and had good experiences with. So I figured, why not give it a shot? Then I saw the prices and I was like, I've never been there before. Let's try it out first in a smaller way. So I ended up with a really small booth. But I have to admit that the fair was way better presented and organized and had a way better and bigger audience than I expected. So that first mistake was really not getting a bigger booth, because I'm going to insert some photos here. My booth was tiny. I was basically up in the space with someone else, and I was more in the designy corner. My work is not design. I mean, you could fit it above like a design couch if you want to see it like that, so it didn't really feel weird. But if you're put in a design corner, prices and expectations are different as well. And it just wasn't the right fit. It just wasn't perfect. So that would be my first mistake, not getting a bigger booth. I don't really regret it though, because I hadn't seen this fair in action before, so I really wanted to experience it first, but I know that my work would have sold better if it was in a bigger booth and all about expanding and taking space. It is a little bit ironic. My second mistake was sort of a mistake, but also it had a good positive side. And that was taking older work with me. I only knew that I was joining this art fair about a month in advance, maybe a month and a half. So I had little to no prep time, because that's like a tiny bit of time if you have not arranged your whole diary around this. So almost all of my work was exhibited in a different place. I did not have a full selection of all the work that I could take with me, so I decided to take a older work with me. I think I painted it in 2021, which meant that I could talk about that work in a more distanced way, because it was made like 4 or 5 years ago, which was a good thing. But then at the same time, I kept showing people my current work on my phone, which was huge, and it wouldn't have fit in that tiny corner. But I kept getting these varied reactions of, oh, so I like this, but then you show me the work on your phone, they didn't say it, but I could feel it. And then that is really impressive. But the work that's on the wall is like, oh, wow, that's really nice. And the work on your phone is like, wow, what is that? So I count it as a mistake, but I didn't really have a choice in that. I could have rushed to make a newer work. I had one choice of a newer work, but I was doubting if I wanted to present that because I didn't feel like it would fit the fair really well. So I brought that older work. But two sides to it. One thing I want to say about talking about your work, like you learn to talk about your work really, really fast. And at some point you have this story in your head. And I was kind of glad that for my first art fair, since my work is quite fragile and it shows a lot of my inner world, that's not really the stories that people want to hear at an art fair. They want to see nice things. They see loads of things. They see like thousands of works and paintings at one day. Imagine having to hear like 10 crazy stories about works at one day. A lot of work is from past experience that weren't so nice. It feels kind of strange and kind of too open to share that with a random person walking past your booth. And even when I say that, I have to say that I did share some really nice moments with some people, but I definitely didn't do that with everyone. So some people got the story about expanding, taking up space, and that was enough. And then they said, oh, it has really nice colors. I'm really drawn to the colors. And I would stop. And some people, they really asked good questions and asked me questions about the titles. And I would explain a little bit more about how that piece made me feel at that moment. But because I had that distance, it was way easier to talk about it than my last work, which is a lot about grief. I'm all about openness, but I'm not about to put myself into some traumatic experience just to sell an artwork. And that's just a really big difference from an opening to an exhibition. Because if you have an opening of an exhibition, you can explain it like once during a presentation, and you don't have to do it like 100 times in a day. So my third mistake that I made is more of a practical production kind of way. And it was to not be super clear in my communications with text, stickers, QR codes, everything that I brought that was printed. The way that I presented my work, I've done this before, so you would think that I would know that the things that people see need to be super clear. I think I've eliminated a lot of mistakes from the past as well, but still I made the mistake to use these stickers next to the work with title, material, year, my name, so that if they photograph it, they have my name with it, and then a QR code. What people thought that QR code led to, which I totally understand, is to actually buy the work. But if you scan that QR code, you would go to my website or a separate website and see the works with their dimensions and their prices, and then you could scroll back and you could see my entire portfolio. But almost no one scanned those QR codes because they thought they were going right to the purchase page, which I totally understand now. And I also thought it would look really busy at my booth, but I thought, you know, I'm gonna do this QR code and then it's super clear that they can see my portfolio. But I just forgot to add the word portfolio there. Another mistake was that, or maybe a mistake, I'm not entirely sure if it's a mistake or just didn't pan out that well. I made these flyers with my artwork, and then at the back I wrote my name and a story about me and what I studied, etc., etc. And then I had a QR code that went to my newsletter sign up. And I thought people would scan it and they would be interested in my work and definitely would be subscribing to my newsletter because that's where I want them to be. I don't necessarily want them on my Instagram because it's nice, but a lot of people won't see my posts there. So I thought, you know, let's try it with a newsletter sign up. But I had 0 sign-ups, so that definitely didn't work. And I have given out a lot of those flyers. It's just something I think, if I think ahead, that people only sign up to your newsletter if they know you a little bit. And this was literally the first time they met me at that fair. So they had no trust yet. The thing I should have done instead was print that QR code from the wall and print it on the paper saying full portfolio, instead of going to my newsletter right away. I could have had a sign up on my website to my newsletter, for example, but I shouldn't have done it on the flyer. The thing that did make sense though, and a lot of people liked, was that I had my name on the wall in my own handwriting. And my partner works at a signing company, so he printed the sticker for me, or he plotted the sticker for me, and that looked really nice. So I'm going to take that with me next year, and then definitely think about my communication, because at a fair you have so little time to talk to people, and if a minute of that or 30 seconds of that moment is explaining what the QR codes are, you kind of missed your chance already. So I know if I go to an art fair, I don't really want to talk to people, or maybe one or two that I'm really interested in. So the fact that I talked to a lot of people was already really nice, but you don't really want to explain what the functions of the QR codes are. And you want to have something there, like the flyer with the text, for people that don't necessarily want to talk. Because that's how I absorb the art around me at a fair, because it's very overwhelming, and sometimes you just want to take a flyer, look at it later. And then the last mistake, the fifth mistake for me, was thinking that it's not all about money, because it is. You go to a fair to sell your work. I think I had hoped to get a bit more connection with people, even though I had some really good conversations. You're there for 3 full days and then an entire evening, the opening evening. And a lot of people are just there to have fun, get a drink, meet other people that are also there, be seen by other people and see other people. It totally makes sense, but I had never experienced it from that side for so long. So I've only been to fairs for 2 hours or so, and I never really go to the opening parties because I don't really care. And now I could experience it from the artist view. So even though people were really nice, I noticed that it didn't give me a deep satisfaction of showing my work to an audience as an exhibition would. And I guess these things are 2 different things. It's like an art fair and exhibition's different thing. But I had to experience it firsthand and really realize that the fairs are really for selling. And the exhibition is really for deeper understanding, getting a fulfillment. It's nice to sell, but you can also really tell a story. And I guess you could tell a small story at an art fair, but there's so much noise around you that you can't really see the work. I personally, if I go to a fair, I wouldn't buy a painting right away, because it's so overwhelming that all the work gets compared to each other. And even if I would really like a work, then I would think about it for a longer time, or wanted to visit a studio, for example, of an artist that I liked. Definitely the smaller works, I guess in that way I am at an advantage for a fair, because I make these really large works, but next time I need the space to get the large works. But the smaller works kind of get overwhelmed by all the other things. And you don't know what kind of neighbors you get at an art fair. I guess you know it, but you don't have a choice in who the neighbors are. So I wouldn't really count that as a mistake, but more of a realization that exhibitions and fairs are 2 completely different things. It is nice if you have a short story that you can tell at the fair, but then keep the longer story for your exhibition. In this case, I would also probably not show completely new work on a fair, because if it gets sold, then it's done. And I would prefer showing it in an exhibition where I could actually tell my story and share with people that wouldn't necessarily buy the painting but would be inspired by their stories. All those things combined, I would definitely do it again with a bigger booth, better communication, and probably with some newer works, but works that I could talk about easily. And I'm also interested in other fairs. Like this one fair that I went to had a very specific audience that I really loved observing, but I could imagine that other fairs are really different. So I'm definitely interested in looking at what is out there, and especially if you're like me, an independent artist, you sell your own work. It is an interesting way to sell your work and show your work to other people, because there's just no way I can get 15,000 eyes on my work by myself. Even if my work goes viral, you can see it on a tiny screen and it's just different in real life. It makes more impact, it's real, you can talk to the artist next to it, and that's what I really, really liked. So I am definitely interested in other fairs. I'd have to see if financially they would be viable, because they are a little bit of a risk. But I thought it was really interesting. So those are my 5 mistakes. I really hope you liked this. I make more art business videos on this channel, and I also share a lot about my studio practice. So I hope you follow along for that journey, and I will see you in the next video.